The Productivity Code, Rewire Your Mind for Deep Focus and Peak Performance. Published by Audiobook Academy.
Introduction. Productivity begins long before you open your laptop, write your first task, or start your morning routine. It begins inside your mind. The way you think about your time, attention, priorities, and ability to concentrate quietly determines how much of your potential becomes reality. You can have a full calendar and still accomplish very little that truly matters. You can spend 12 hours working and finish the day wondering where the time went. You can constantly respond, organize, plan, and prepare, yet remain stuck on the work that could actually change your career, your business, or your life. The difference is not always effort. Often it is direction. Peak performance does not come from forcing yourself to work harder every minute. It comes from learning how to control your attention, eliminate unnecessary distractions, focus deeply, and consistently direct your best energy toward meaningful work. In this audiobook, we will explore how to rewire your mind for deep focus and peak performance. You will discover how to redefine productivity, train your attention, eliminate distractions, establish powerful routines, prioritize what matters, protect your energy, finish what you start, and build systems that continue working even when motivation disappears. You will learn that extraordinary productivity is not about doing everything. It is about doing the right things with greater clarity, discipline, and depth. Your time is limited, your attention is valuable, your potential is waiting. The productivity code begins when you decide to stop giving your best mind to everything and start giving it to what matters most. Chapter 1. Rewire your definition of productivity. Productivity begins with a definition. Before you change your schedule, download another planning app, wake up earlier, or create a longer task list, you have to answer one important question. What does it actually mean to be productive? If your answer is simply doing more, you may spend years becoming extremely efficient at things that do not deserve your time. True productivity is not about filling every hour. It is about using your limited time and attention to create meaningful results. Think about how easily a busy day can fool you. You answer emails, return messages, organize files, attend meetings, make phone calls, check notifications, update your calendar, and complete several small tasks. By the end of the day, you feel exhausted because you have been moving constantly. Yet when you ask yourself what truly improved, what important goal moved forward, you may struggle to name it. Activity creates a feeling of accomplishment, but meaningful progress requires something deeper. Grant Holloway, a 34-year-old insurance account manager, had built exactly this kind of reputation. His co-workers knew they could depend on him because he responded quickly to almost everything. His inbox was always under control, his calendar was packed, and he rarely left a request unanswered. But Grant had been assigned an important client growth project that could significantly improve his position within the company. Week after week, he kept postponing it because smaller tasks always seemed more urgent. One afternoon, he looked at the project and realized something uncomfortable. He had been working hard every day, but he had not been working on what mattered most. That realization changed the way he viewed productivity. You may recognize a little of Grant in yourself. Perhaps you spend your best hours reacting to other people's priorities. Perhaps you begin the morning with a plan but abandon it the moment a notification appears. Perhaps you feel productive because you crossed 20 items from your list, even though the one task capable of creating the greatest result remains unfinished. There is nothing wrong with answering emails or completing small responsibilities. The problem begins when small responsibilities consume the attention that should belong to important work. Productivity is not measured by how tired you become. It is measured by the value you create with your effort. A person who spends 3 deeply focused hours building something important may accomplish more than someone who spends 10 distracted hours constantly switching between tasks. This is why you must stop treating every task as equally valuable. Some actions maintain your life. Others move your life forward. Learning to recognize the difference is one of the first skills of a productive mind. Start looking at your day differently. Instead of asking, "How much can I get done today?" ask, "What deserves my best attention today?" That single question changes your relationship with time. It forces you to think about outcomes rather than activity. It reminds you that your attention is not an unlimited resource that can be scattered across dozens of demands without consequence. You also need to understand that productivity requires subtraction. Sometimes the most productive decision is not adding another task, but removing one. It may mean declining a meeting, turning off a notification, postponing a low-value request, simplifying a process, or refusing to participate in something that does not support your priorities. Every unnecessary commitment takes a small piece of your attention. Enough small pieces eventually leave you with very little concentration for the work that matters. Your goal is not to become a machine that operates from morning until night. Your goal is to become intentional. Know what matters, know what does not. Give your strongest attention to the work that deserves it. When you begin thinking this way, productivity stops being a race to complete more tasks and becomes a discipline of directing your life toward meaningful results. The first code is simple. Do not measure your day by how much you did. Chapter 2. Train your brain to focus on command. Focus is not something you either have or you do not have. It is a skill. Just like strength grows when you train your muscles, concentration grows when you repeatedly teach your mind to stay with one thing. The problem is that your attention is constantly being invited somewhere else. A message appears, a notification lights up, a thought about something unrelated enters your mind. A difficult task suddenly feels uncomfortable and an easier one becomes strangely attractive. Before you realize it, your attention has moved. The good news is that you can train yourself to take it back. Think of your attention as a spotlight. Wherever you point it, your mind begins collecting information, making connections, solving problems, and creating results. But if you keep moving that spotlight every few seconds, you never give anything enough time to become clear. You may be looking at many things, but you are not seeing any of them deeply. Deep focus begins when you learn to keep the spotlight in one place long enough for your thinking to become powerful. The first step is to stop waiting to feel focused. Many people approach important work with the expectation that concentration should arrive naturally. They tell themselves, "I'll start when I'm in the mood," but your mood changes constantly. Your responsibilities do not. If you make concentration dependent on how you feel, your performance will always be inconsistent. Instead, decide that focus is something you initiate. You sit down, choose the task, remove unnecessary distractions, and begin. The feeling of focus often comes after the action, not before it. Your brain also needs a clear target. Telling yourself to work on the business or study for a while is too vague. Give your mind a specific assignment. Instead of saying, "I need to work on my presentation," say, "I will finish the opening 5 slides." Instead of saying, "I need to write," decide, "I will complete the first section." Clarity reduces resistance because your brain knows exactly what it is being asked to do. You can strengthen this ability by creating a simple starting ritual. Perhaps you clear your desk, silence your phone, close unnecessary tabs, put on headphones, take a breath, and begin with the same type of task. The ritual itself is not magic. Its purpose is to give your mind a recognizable signal. Now it is time to concentrate. Repeated often enough, the beginning becomes easier because your brain learns the pattern. At first, staying focused may feel surprisingly difficult. You may sit down to work and suddenly remember something you need to search for, someone you need to contact, or an article you want to read. Do not assume that every thought deserves immediate action. Keep a piece of paper nearby and write the thought down. You are not ignoring it. You are simply refusing to let it interrupt the work in front of you. Once you finish your focus period, you can decide whether that thought deserves your attention. This practice becomes especially important when the work gets difficult. The mind often looks for an escape when it encounters complexity. You may suddenly feel the urge to check your phone, make coffee, reorganize your files, or do something easier. Recognize what is happening. Discomfort does not always mean that you should stop. Sometimes it means you have reached the point where meaningful thinking begins. Imagine sitting with a difficult problem for 20 minutes. At first, nothing seems to happen. Then a connection appears. One idea leads to another. The problem begins to make sense. That moment is one of the rewards of sustained attention. You cannot reach it if you leave every time your mind becomes uncomfortable. Focus also requires patience with yourself. You will lose concentration. Everyone does. The goal is not to create a mind that never wanders. The goal is to become better at noticing when it wanders and bringing it back. Every return is a repetition. Every repetition strengthens the skill. If your mind drifts 10 times during a work session and you calmly bring it back 10 times, you have not failed 10 times, you have trained 10 times. Over time, something begins to change. You no longer need constant stimulation to remain engaged. Difficult work becomes less intimidating. You become more comfortable with silence. You begin enjoying the feeling of being completely absorbed in something meaningful. Your mind becomes less reactive and more deliberate. This is the deeper purpose of focus. You are not simply trying to finish a task faster. You are learning to control where your mind goes, and when you can control your... Chapter 3. Eliminate the distractions that steal your potential. Your attention can only be in one place at a time, yet your environment constantly tries to pull it somewhere else. A notification flashes across the screen. A message arrives. Another browser tab sits open. Your phone is within reach. Someone asks a quick question. You remember something you wanted to search for. None of these interruptions seems important by itself, but together they can quietly destroy the quality of an entire workday. If you want deeper focus, you cannot simply hope distractions will leave you alone. You have to design your life so they have fewer opportunities to interrupt you. This is where many people make a mistake. They believe productivity is mainly about having stronger willpower. They tell themselves, I just need more discipline. I should be able to ignore my phone. But why make your brain fight the same battle 50 times a day? If a distraction is always within reach, you are asking willpower to perform a job that your environment could perform much more easily. Real productivity comes from reducing unnecessary decisions before they appear. Look at your workspace. What is competing for your attention right now? Is your phone sitting beside your keyboard? Are several unrelated tabs open? Are email notifications appearing in the corner of your screen? Is social media only one click away? Are you working in a place where people regularly interrupt you? Your environment is constantly sending instructions to your brain. If everything around you says, look here, check this, respond now, sustained concentration becomes much harder. The solution is not to create a perfect environment, it is to create an intentional one. Put your phone somewhere you cannot casually reach it. Silence notifications that are not genuinely important. Close browser tabs that have nothing to do with the task. Keep only the materials required for the work in front of you. If possible, establish a physical space that your mind associates with concentrated work. The fewer competing signals you receive, the easier it becomes to stay with the task. There is another kind of distraction that is even more powerful because you cannot simply turn it off. It comes from inside your own mind. You may be working on a report when you suddenly remember an unpaid bill. You may be writing when an idea for another project appears. You may be studying when you start thinking about something that happened yesterday. These thoughts are normal. The mistake is believing you have to follow every thought the moment it appears. Keep a simple capture system. When an unrelated thought arrives, write it down and return to the task. You are telling your brain, I have not forgotten this. I will deal with it later. That small action prevents your mind from repeatedly checking whether the thought is still there. You create a place for the thought without allowing it to take control of your attention. You should also pay attention to digital distractions that disguise themselves as productive activities. Checking email can feel responsible. Reading another article can feel like research. Organizing your task manager can feel like preparation. Watching one more tutorial can feel like learning. But productive-looking behavior can still become avoidance when it keeps you away from the difficult work that produces the actual result. Ask yourself a simple question whenever you are tempted to switch tasks. Am I moving the important work forward, or am I escaping the discomfort of doing it? Be honest. Sometimes you will discover that you are not tired or confused. You simply want something easier. Distraction becomes especially dangerous when it creates a habit of interruption. If you train yourself to check your phone every few minutes, your brain begins expecting novelty. Silence starts feeling uncomfortable. A difficult task feels unusually demanding because your mind has become accustomed to constant stimulation. But habits can be retrained. You can gradually teach yourself that nothing is wrong with being unreachable for a while. Try creating periods during the day when you deliberately disconnect. Give yourself a defined block of time to work without checking messages or browsing unrelated information. At first, you may feel restless. That restlessness is not a sign that the system is failing. It is evidence that your brain is adjusting to a different rhythm. Remember, the goal is not to eliminate every distraction from your life. That is impossible. The goal is to make distraction less automatic. You decide when to check messages. You decide when to browse. You decide when to respond. You decide when to be available and when to disappear into meaningful work. Your attention is one of the most valuable assets you will ever possess because everything important you build requires it. Your career, your skills, your relationships, your ideas, and your goals all depend on where you place your mind. So stop treating your attention like something the world is entitled to consume. Protect it. Create distance from what constantly interrupts you. Remove unnecessary noise. Make important work easier to begin and distraction harder to reach. Then notice what happens when your mind is no longer being pulled in 10 directions. You will have more clarity. You will think more deeply. You will work with greater confidence. And most importantly, you will begin experiencing something that modern life makes increasingly rare, the feeling of giving your complete attention to one meaningful thing. That is where your potential becomes visible. Chapter 4. Master the power of one important thing. Your day can be full of activity and still move you nowhere important. You can write a long task list, answer every message, attend every meeting, and finish dozens of small responsibilities, yet reach the end of the day knowing that the one thing that truly mattered is still waiting. This happens when everything is treated as a priority. When everything demands your attention, nothing receives enough of it. The productive mind learns to ask a different question: what matters most right now? That question sounds simple, but answering it honestly requires discipline. There will always be more things you could do. Another email can be answered, another document can be organized, another call can be made, another problem can be solved. But your time is limited, and your attention is even more limited. You cannot give everything your best effort. You have to choose. Imagine beginning your morning with 10 tasks. 1 is important but difficult. 3 are moderately useful. 6 are easy and satisfying. Which ones will you naturally want to complete first? Probably the easy ones. They provide quick victories. You can cross them off the list and feel productive. But the difficult task remains, growing heavier in your mind because you know it matters. This is why prioritization is not simply a scheduling skill. It is a test of your willingness to face what matters before what feels comfortable. Your most important task is often not the task you feel like doing. It may require concentration, courage, creativity, or uncomfortable decisions. It may not provide an immediate reward, but meaningful progress rarely comes from endlessly choosing the easiest option. Start identifying one important outcome for each day, not 10. 1. This does not mean you will only perform one task. You will still handle ordinary responsibilities, but one result becomes the center of your attention. If that result is completed, the day has meaning, even if several smaller things remain unfinished. Suppose your priority is to finish the first draft of an important proposal. Your email inbox may still need attention. Your phone may still contain unanswered messages. Your desk may still have paperwork waiting, but now you know what deserves your strongest mental energy. You can schedule the proposal during the part of the day when your mind is sharpest and place smaller tasks around it instead of allowing them to consume the hours you need. This approach also forces you to understand the difference between urgency and importance. Urgent tasks demand attention because something appears to require a response now. Important tasks often remain quiet. They may not have a deadline today, but they determine where your life will be months or years from now. Building a valuable skill is important. Improving your health is important. Developing your business is important. Strengthening an important relationship is important. These things can easily lose to urgent but insignificant demands because they rarely shout for attention. If you want a better life, you must learn to hear what is quiet. Your priorities should also reflect your larger direction. Ask yourself what you are trying to build. What would make the biggest difference if you improved it over the next year? What responsibility, project, or skill deserves more attention than it currently receives? Your answers reveal where your priorities should go. And once you identify what matters, you have to learn to say no. Every yes has a cost. When you agree to another commitment, meeting, project, favor, or distraction, you are giving away time that could have been used elsewhere. Saying no does not mean you are selfish. It means you understand that your attention has limits. There will always be people who want more of your time. There will always be opportunities you cannot pursue. There will always be interesting things you could learn and projects you could begin. You cannot live every possible life. You have to choose one direction and give it enough attention to become something real. This is why one important thing is so powerful. It creates a center for your day. Instead of waking up and asking, "What should I do now?" you already know. You have decided before the distractions arrive. Do not underestimate what happens when you repeat this process. One important task completed today becomes another tomorrow. Those completed tasks become projects. Projects become skills, opportunities, relationships, businesses, and achievements. What looks like a small decision each morning can eventually shape the direction of your entire life. Your goal is not to finish everything. Your goal is to make sure the right things do not remain unfinished. So tomorrow, before you open your inbox, before you scroll through your phone, and before the world starts asking for your attention, ask yourself one question. If I accomplish only one meaningful thing today, what should it be? Then protect it. Give it your best attention. Give it your strongest energy. Give it enough uninterrupted time to become real. Because Chapter 5. Build a routine that makes discipline automatic. Discipline becomes much easier when you stop asking yourself to make the same difficult decision every day. You should not have to wake up each morning and negotiate with yourself about whether you will focus, exercise, write, study, build your business, or work on an important goal. The more often you have to decide whether to do something, the more opportunities you create for hesitation. A powerful routine removes much of that negotiation. It turns important actions into expected parts of your day. Think about brushing your teeth. You rarely need to motivate yourself to do it. You do not spend 10 minutes debating whether today is the right day. You simply follow the routine. That is the power of repetition. The behavior has become connected to a particular moment, place, or sequence. Productivity can work the same way. When you consistently perform your most important work at a predictable time, your mind begins to recognize that period as a time for action rather than debate. Lauren Whitaker, a 31-year-old freelance graphic designer, had plenty of talent but struggled with consistency. She would wake up with ambitious plans, check a few client messages, glance at social media, respond to small requests, and then spend much of the morning moving between minor tasks. By the time she reached the creative work that required her best thinking, her attention was already scattered. Instead of trying to become more motivated, Lauren changed the structure of her day. She created a protected block for creative work before opening her messages. After several weeks, starting became easier because the routine had removed the daily argument about when to begin. Your routine does not have to be complicated. In fact, the best routines are often surprisingly simple. You need a clear starting point, a clear priority, and a predictable sequence. Perhaps you begin your workday by reviewing your main objective, clearing your desk, putting your phone away, and working for a focused period. Perhaps you reserve the first hour for writing, the afternoon for meetings, and the final part of the day for administrative tasks. The exact structure matters less than the consistency. A routine should support your priorities, not simply make you feel organized. It is possible to create a beautiful schedule filled with color-coded blocks and detailed lists while still avoiding the work that matters. Your routine exists to make meaningful action easier. If your biggest goal requires deep concentration, your schedule should protect the hours when you can concentrate best. This is why you should pay attention to how you begin your day. The first serious activity often influences the direction of everything that follows. If you begin by reacting to messages, you immediately place your attention in the hands of other people. If you begin with meaningful work, you create momentum around your own priorities. You do not need a perfect morning routine. You simply need to avoid giving your best mental energy away before you have used it for yourself. The same principle applies to the end of your workday. A simple shutdown routine can help your mind separate work from everything else. Review what you completed. Identify anything that remains unfinished. Decide what needs your attention tomorrow. Then close your workspace. This small practice prevents unfinished tasks from following you everywhere mentally. You leave work knowing that the important information has been captured and the next step has already been chosen. Your routine should also contain flexibility. Life will interrupt you. Meetings will move. Unexpected responsibilities will appear. Some days will not go according to plan. The goal is not to create a schedule so rigid that one interruption destroys the entire system. The goal is to have a default structure you can return to. When the day goes wrong, you do not need to start over. You simply return to the routine at the next available opportunity. There is another powerful benefit to routines. They strengthen identity. Every time you keep a commitment to yourself, you send a message about the kind of person you are becoming. If you repeatedly sit down and complete your important work, you begin seeing yourself as someone who follows through. If you repeatedly protect your attention, you become someone who values concentration. If you repeatedly finish what you start, discipline becomes part of your identity rather than something you occasionally force yourself to perform. Do not try to change your entire life in 1 week. Choose a few behaviors that matter most. Give them a place in your day. Repeat them until they become familiar, then build from there. The purpose of a routine is not to make your life boring. It is to remove unnecessary uncertainty so that your energy can be spent on things that deserve creativity, judgment, and ambition. Chapter 6. Enter the state of deep work. There is a level of concentration where the outside world seems to become quieter, the passage of time becomes less noticeable, and your mind becomes completely absorbed in the task in front of you. You are no longer simply working. You are thinking deeply, solving problems, creating connections, and producing something that could not have been created through scattered attention. This is the state of deep work, and learning to enter it deliberately can transform the quality of everything you do. Deep work begins with a decision. For a certain period of time, one thing will receive your complete attention. Not your email and your report, not your phone and your presentation, not your research and a stream of notifications. One meaningful objective. When you remove the competition for your attention, your mind has room to go deeper. Nathan Brooks, A 39-year-old civil engineer had been struggling with a complex infrastructure proposal. His days were filled with messages from contractors, meetings with colleagues, quick questions, and administrative requests. By the afternoon, he had been busy for hours but had made little progress on the proposal itself. Nathan eventually began reserving a quiet period early each morning for technical work. During those hours, his phone stayed away, his email remained closed, and he worked on only one section of the proposal. What surprised him was not simply how much faster he worked. It was how much better he thought when his attention was not constantly being interrupted. Deep work requires a clearly defined target. Do not sit down and simply tell yourself that you will work hard. Decide exactly what you want to accomplish. You might write a certain section, solve a particular problem, analyze a set of information, or complete a specific stage of a project. A clear target gives your mind something to move toward. Without one, it is easy to drift into low-value activity while convincing yourself that you are still working. Then create a boundary around your attention. Choose a period of time during which you will not check messages, browse unrelated websites, or switch to another task. The boundary can be 30 minutes, 60 minutes, or longer as your ability develops. The important thing is that the rule is clear before you begin. You do not want to negotiate with yourself every 5 minutes. At first, deep work may feel uncomfortable. You may discover how often your mind has become accustomed to stimulation. Without notifications and quick distractions, silence can feel strangely empty. You may suddenly want to check something that seems urgent. You may feel the urge to stand up, get coffee, or look at your phone. Notice those urges without automatically obeying them. This is where deep work becomes a form of mental training. You are teaching yourself that an uncomfortable moment does not require an immediate escape. You can remain with the problem. You can sit with uncertainty. You can continue thinking when the answer has not appeared yet. The ability to remain present during difficulty is one of the foundations of exceptional performance. There is also a rhythm to deep work. You begin by entering the task. Then, after some time, your mind settles. The surface-level thoughts begin to fade, and your attention becomes more stable. You start seeing relationships that were not obvious before. Ideas become clearer. Problems that initially seemed complicated begin to break into smaller pieces. This is why interruptions are so expensive. Every interruption can pull you out of that deeper mental state and force you to rebuild it. You should also understand that deep work is not endless work. Your brain has limits. A focused session should eventually end. When it does, step away deliberately, move around, rest, eat, talk to someone. Let your mind recover. The goal is not to spend every hour in intense concentration. The goal is to create periods of extraordinary focus surrounded by appropriate recovery. Before ending a deep work session, take a moment to identify what comes next. Write down the next action, especially if the project is unfinished. This makes it easier to return later because you do not have to spend valuable attention figuring out where you stopped. With practice, you may begin to notice something important. Deep work does not only increase productivity, it changes your relationship with difficult tasks. Instead of fearing complexity, you begin to welcome the opportunity to concentrate. Instead of constantly looking for something easier, you become comfortable staying with something meaningful. That ability is increasingly valuable in a world that constantly competes for your attention. Your best ideas will not always arrive while you are rushing. Your strongest work will not always emerge while you are responding. Chapter 7. Stop multitasking and start thinking clearly. Your mind can feel incredibly busy without doing anything particularly well. You can answer a message while listening to a meeting, glance at an email while writing a report, and think about tomorrow while trying to finish today's work. Because everything happens quickly, it can feel like you are accomplishing more, but speed and effectiveness are not the same thing. When your attention is divided repeatedly, the quality of your thinking begins to decline. Multitasking is often described as a useful ability, but much of what we call multitasking is actually rapid switching. Your attention moves from one task to another, then back again, carrying pieces of the previous task with it. You may leave a document to answer a message and return to the document a minute later, but part of your mind is still processing the conversation. You have returned physically, but your attention has not completely returned with you. This is one reason simple tasks can consume so much time. Imagine spending 10 minutes writing, 5 minutes checking messages, 12 minutes researching something unrelated, then returning to your original work. None of those individual actions seems disastrous, but the transitions between them create friction. Every time you switch, you have to remember where you were, what you were thinking, and what you intended to do next. That hidden cost becomes enormous when the work requires real concentration. Think about writing an important piece of work. You are developing an argument and suddenly receive a message. You check it quickly, you answer, then you return to your writing. The interruption may have lasted only 2 minutes, but the idea you were developing may take much longer to recover. The thread of thought has been broken. You have to reconstruct it. Sometimes the best part of the idea never returns. This is why single tasking is so powerful. It gives your mind permission to stay with one problem long enough to understand it. You are not constantly asking yourself what deserves attention next. You already know. The decision has been made. Start with small periods of single tasking. Choose one task and remove everything unrelated. If you are writing, write. If you are reading, read. If you are speaking with someone, listen. If you are solving a problem, solve that problem. You do not need to become perfectly focused overnight. You simply need to become more deliberate about where your attention goes. One of the most useful habits you can develop is finishing mental loops before opening new ones. If you are halfway through a task and suddenly feel tempted to start something else, pause and ask whether the new task truly requires immediate attention. Often it does not. Write down the thought if necessary and return to what you were doing. This simple practice creates something valuable, mental closure. Your brain begins learning that not every new idea deserves immediate action. The same principle applies to communication. You do not need to respond to every message the second it arrives. When you train yourself to remain constantly available, you make other people's timing more important than your own priorities. Instead, create specific periods for checking communication. During your focused work, let your attention belong to the work. You may worry that you will miss something important, but ask yourself how many of the interruptions you receive each day are genuinely urgent. Very few. Most can wait 30 minutes, an hour, or even longer. The ability to tolerate a delayed response is a small but powerful form of self-control. Single tasking also improves the quality of ordinary experiences. When you eat without scrolling, you notice your food. When you speak without checking your phone, you hear the other person more clearly. When you read without constantly switching tabs, you understand more deeply. Focus is not merely a professional skill. It changes how fully you experience your life. There is another benefit that is easy to overlook. When you stop constantly switching, your mind becomes calmer. You are no longer carrying 10 unfinished thoughts at the same time. Your mental environment becomes less crowded. You can think about one problem without hearing the faint noise of everything else demanding attention. That clarity improves decision-making. It becomes easier to see what matters, what can wait, and what should be removed completely. You stop reacting to every new stimulus and begin responding intentionally. So the next time you catch yourself trying to do several things at once, stop, choose one, give it your full attention. If another task appears, capture it somewhere and return to the original work. Complete what you can, then move deliberately to the next thing. You may discover that you were never short on time. You were short on uninterrupted attention. Great work requires continuity. Great thinking requires depth. And both become possible when you stop dividing your mind into pieces. You do not need to do more things at once. You need to be fully present for the Chapter 8. Protect your energy, not just your time. Time is one of the few resources you can never earn back, but there is another resource that determines what you can actually accomplish with that time: your energy. You can have 3 free hours in your schedule and still produce very little if your mind is exhausted, your attention is scattered, or your body is asking for rest. This is why productivity is not simply a matter of finding more hours. It is about learning how to use the hours when you are capable of doing your best work. You may have noticed that your ability to concentrate changes throughout the day. There are moments when ideas seem to arrive easily, decisions feel simple, and difficult work feels manageable. Then there are other moments when even a basic task seems unnecessarily difficult. Nothing about the task has changed. Your capacity has changed. Understanding this difference can completely change how you organize your day. Instead of treating every hour as equally valuable, begin noticing when your mind is strongest. For some people, the morning brings their clearest thinking. For others, their strongest period arrives later. The exact time does not matter as much as discovering your own pattern. Once you know when your best energy usually appears, protect that period for work that requires your highest level of concentration. Do not spend your sharpest hour answering messages simply because they arrived first. Do not give your best mental energy to tasks that could easily be handled later. If writing, planning, creating, studying, analyzing, or solving problems requires your full attention, give those activities the hours when your mind is most capable of doing them well. This also means recognizing the difference between physical tiredness and mental resistance. Sometimes you genuinely need rest. Other times, you simply do not want to do difficult work. If you treat every uncomfortable feeling as exhaustion, you will eventually train yourself to escape challenging tasks. But if you ignore every signal from your body and mind, you can push yourself into unnecessary fatigue. Productivity requires judgment. Learn to distinguish between needing a break and wanting an excuse. Breaks are not the enemy of productivity. In many cases, they protect it. When you work continuously without allowing yourself to recover, concentration gradually weakens. You may remain at your desk, but the quality of your thinking drops. You read the same sentence twice. You make avoidable mistakes. You stare at a problem without making progress. At that point, continuing to sit there is not necessarily discipline. Sometimes the productive decision is to step away and return with a clearer mind. Recovery should therefore become part of your system rather than something you feel guilty about. Stand up, walk for a few minutes, drink water. Look away from the screen. Spend time without constant digital stimulation. Let your mind become quiet. You are not abandoning the work. You are preparing yourself to return to it with greater capacity. Your physical environment also influences your energy. A cluttered workspace, uncomfortable chair, poor lighting, constant noise, or endless digital interruptions can create small amounts of friction throughout the day. None of these things seems powerful enough to ruin your performance, but together they create a background drain. Make your workspace support the person you want to become. Keep what you need nearby and what distracts you at a distance. Your evenings matter too. If you spend the final hours of every day filling your mind with endless notifications, arguments, entertainment, and information, you may technically be resting while your brain continues working. Genuine recovery requires periods when you are not constantly consuming something. Silence can be more restorative than another hour of stimulation. There is also a deeper lesson here. You should stop being impressed by how long you can work without stopping. Long hours are not automatically a sign of commitment. Sometimes they reveal poor planning, weak boundaries, or an inability to distinguish important work from unnecessary work. The real question is not, how many hours did I work? It is, how much valuable energy did I direct toward meaningful results? When you understand this, your relationship with productivity changes. You stop trying to squeeze maximum output from every minute. Instead, you begin managing your energy with intention. You place demanding work where your mind is strongest. You protect your concentration. You recover before exhaustion becomes the price of achievement. You learn when to push and when to pause. This does not mean becoming soft, it means becoming strategic. A person who constantly burns through their energy eventually has very little left for the moments that matter. A person who manages energy wisely can remain effective for much longer. They can work deeply, recover. Chapter 9. Finish what you start. There is a special kind of mental weight that comes from having too many unfinished things in your life. An email you keep meaning to answer, a book you started months ago, a project sitting half completed on your computer, a course you promised yourself you would finish, an idea you were excited about until something newer caught your attention. Each unfinished task may seem small, but together they create a background noise in your mind. You may not think about them constantly, yet some part of your attention remains connected to them. Starting is exciting because starting gives you possibility. You can imagine what the project could become. You can picture the finished result without having experienced the difficult middle. But finishing requires something different. It requires patience when the excitement disappears. It requires continuing when the work becomes repetitive. And it requires resisting the temptation to replace a difficult commitment with a new and more interesting one. Ethan Caldwell, a 42-year-old small business owner, had become very good at starting improvements. He had created plans for better customer service, new marketing campaigns, improved internal systems, and several ideas for expanding his company. His office was full of notes and unfinished plans. Every new idea felt exciting, but many were abandoned before they produced anything meaningful. Eventually, Ethan chose one operational problem and decided that nothing new would receive his serious attention until that problem was solved. For the first time in a long while, he experienced the satisfaction of seeing one of his ideas move from a thought into a completed result. The lesson is simple. Unfinished work consumes more than time. It consumes attention. When you constantly carry open projects, your mind has to remember them, revisit them, and wonder what should happen next. This creates mental clutter. Completion creates space. That does not mean you should finish everything you have ever started. Some projects deserve to be abandoned. Some commitments no longer make sense. Some goals were based on information you no longer have. There is nothing productive about finishing something simply because you started it. The real skill is learning to make a deliberate decision, finish it, remove it, or consciously postpone it. What drains you is not necessarily an unfinished task. It is an unresolved task that remains floating in your mind without a decision. Before beginning something new, ask yourself what it will require to finish. This question can save you from collecting endless commitments. Starting is easy when you only consider the first step. Finishing requires seeing the entire path. You should also define what finished actually means. Without a clear definition, a project can expand forever. You can keep researching, editing, improving, adjusting, and preparing. Eventually, preparation becomes a hiding place. Decide what completion looks like before you begin. Then work toward that point. Perfectionism is another common reason people fail to finish. You tell yourself that the work is not ready yet. One more revision, one more improvement, one more piece of information. Sometimes those improvements are necessary, but sometimes perfectionism is simply fear wearing a respectable disguise. You are afraid to release the work because once it is finished, it can be judged. Finished work can be improved. Unfinished work cannot create results. This is especially important when building skills. Your first attempt will probably not be your best. Your first article may not be excellent. Your first presentation may not be impressive. Your first business system may have weaknesses. But completion gives you something valuable, feedback. Once something exists, you can evaluate it, you can learn from it, you can improve the next version. Finishing also builds self-trust. Every time you make a commitment and keep it, you strengthen the belief that your word means something. Every time you repeatedly abandon your own plans, you weaken that belief. Over time, this can affect how confidently you approach bigger goals. You begin expecting yourself to quit when things become difficult. Reverse that pattern. Make smaller commitments if necessary, but keep them. Choose one project and finish it. Complete the chapter, send the proposal, publish the article, organize the system, make the decision. Do not constantly wait for the perfect conditions. There will always be another idea waiting, another opportunity will appear. Something new will seem more exciting, but if you keep changing direction, you never allow your effort to compound. You do not need more beginnings, you need more endings. Look at the commitments currently occupying your mind. Decide what truly matters. Chapter 10. Make decisions before distractions arrive. Every day, you make hundreds of decisions, many of them so small that you barely notice them. What should I work on first? Should I answer this message? Should I check email now? Should I start the difficult task or handle a few easy ones? Should I attend this meeting? Should I work on my long-term goal or deal with another urgent request? None of these choices seems powerful on its own, but together they consume attention. When you spend your entire day deciding what to do next, you leave less mental energy for actually doing it. This is why productive people do not rely entirely on decisions made in the moment. They make important decisions in advance. They create rules, routines, schedules, and boundaries that tell them what to do before distractions appear. Instead of negotiating with themselves every hour, they decide once and follow the decision. Think about how much easier it is to act when the next step is already clear. If you wake up knowing that from 8 to 10 you will work on your most important project, you do not need to spend the first 30 minutes wondering where to begin. The decision has already been made. Your job is execution. Pre-decisions are powerful because the future version of you will not always be as disciplined as the present version of you hopes. You may feel ambitious at night and imagine everything you will accomplish tomorrow. Then morning arrives, your phone is full of notifications, you feel slightly tired, and suddenly the plan seems less attractive. If the decision is left to that moment, the easier option often wins. Decide before the temptation arrives. Choose when you will work. Decide when you will check communication. Determine what deserves your attention first. Establish which activities are allowed during focused work and which are not. Decide how you will handle interruptions. These rules reduce the number of negotiations you have to conduct with yourself. This does not mean turning your life into a rigid machine. It means removing unnecessary uncertainty. You can still change your plan when circumstances genuinely require it, but a strong default plan gives you something to return to. One of the simplest examples is email. If you leave your inbox open all day, every incoming message becomes a potential command. You may not consciously think, "I have to answer this immediately," but the presence of the notification creates pressure. Instead, decide in advance when you will check email. Perhaps once in the morning after your first focused work session and again later in the afternoon. Now email has a place in your day without being allowed to control the entire day. The same principle works with your phone. You do not need to ask yourself every few minutes whether you should check it. Create a rule. During deep work, it stays away. During breaks, you can look at it. A simple rule removes a complicated internal conversation. Pre-decisions also help you protect your priorities from other people's urgency. When someone asks for your time, you can compare the request against what you already decided matters. Instead of automatically saying yes, you can pause and ask, "Does this support my current priorities?" If it does, make room. If it does not, decline, delay, or delegate when appropriate. Your calendar can become more than a record of appointments. It can become a record of your decisions. When you reserve time for important work, you are making a statement about what matters. You are telling yourself that your goals deserve space before the day becomes crowded. There is another decision you should make: what you will do when your motivation disappears. If you only work when you feel inspired, your output will constantly rise and fall. Create a minimum standard. Perhaps you decide that even on difficult days, you will complete 30 minutes of meaningful work. The amount can change, but the commitment remains. This keeps the identity alive. You can also make decisions about what you will not do. No unnecessary meetings during certain hours. No social media before completing the most important task. No starting a new major project before an existing priority is finished. No checking messages during deep work. Boundaries become easier when they are decided beforehand because you no longer need to invent an argument every time temptation appears. Your future self benefits from the decisions you make today. Imagine beginning tomorrow with the important choices already settled. You know what matters. You know when you will work. You know what you will ignore. You know when you will rest. You know when you will communicate. Instead of spending the morning negotiating with yourself, you simply begin. That is the quiet advantage of pre-decisions. Productivity becomes easier when fewer moments require willpower. So look at your life and identify the decisions you keep making repeatedly. Turn them into rules, turn rules into routines, turn routines into automatic behavior. The objective is not to remove freedom from your life. It is to stop wasting freedom on decisions that never needed to be made in the first place. Chapter 11. Turn consistency into an unfair advantage. Extraordinary results rarely come from one extraordinary day. They come from ordinary actions repeated long enough to produce extraordinary consequences. You may be tempted to believe that success belongs to people who are naturally disciplined, unusually talented, or capable of working with incredible intensity. But look more closely, and you will often find something much simpler. They keep showing up. They continue when the excitement disappears. They return after a difficult day. They perform the important action again and again until it becomes part of who they are. Consistency is powerful because it compounds. One focused hour may not seem life-changing. One page written may not seem impressive. One workout may not transform your body. One sales call may not change your business. But repeated actions accumulate. What feels insignificant today can become impossible to ignore after months or years of repetition. Maya Richardson, a 36-year-old financial analyst, wanted to become a stronger writer and communicator. She had tried several times to improve. Every few months, she would become highly motivated, purchase a course, create an ambitious schedule, and promise herself that she would spend hours practicing every weekend. The pattern never lasted. Eventually, Maya stopped trying to transform herself through intensity. She began writing for a short, fixed period each day. It was not dramatic, but it was sustainable. Months later, the difference was obvious. Her writing was clearer, her ideas were easier to organize, and she felt more confident communicating at work. The change had not come from one heroic effort. It had come from hundreds of ordinary repetitions. This is where consistency becomes an advantage. You do not have to outperform everyone today. You need to be willing to continue improving after other people lose interest. Many people begin with enthusiasm because beginnings feel exciting. Fewer people remain committed when progress becomes slow and repetitive. If you can stay in the game, time begins working in your favor. Consistency also changes identity. Every time you keep a promise to yourself, you collect evidence about who you are. You say you will write, and you write. You say you will study, and you study. You say you will finish the project, and you finish it. These actions gradually create a belief. I am someone who follows through. That belief makes future action easier because you are no longer trying to convince yourself to behave differently. You are acting in alignment with the person you believe yourself to be. But consistency does not mean perfection. You will miss days, you will become tired, your schedule will change. Unexpected responsibilities will interrupt you. The mistake is turning one missed day into a permanent retreat. Missing once is an event. Quitting is a decision. When you fall out of rhythm, return quickly. Do not spend a week criticizing yourself because you missed yesterday. Do not wait for Monday, the beginning of a new month, or some imaginary perfect moment. Resume at the next opportunity. The faster you return, the less damage the interruption creates. You should also make your commitments realistic. If your system requires an extraordinary amount of motivation to maintain, it is probably too demanding. Choose a standard that challenges you but can survive ordinary life. A small action performed consistently is often more powerful than an impressive action performed occasionally. This principle applies to nearly everything worth building. Skills improve through practice. Relationships improve through attention. Businesses improve through repeated execution. Knowledge grows through continued learning. Confidence grows through repeated evidence that you can handle challenges. Wealth grows through disciplined financial behavior. Your life is largely the result of what you repeatedly do. Consistency becomes especially powerful when combined with focus. You are not merely repeating random actions. You are repeating actions that point in the same direction. One focused effort followed by another creates momentum. Eventually, the results begin to appear faster because your previous work makes the next step easier. Think of a path through a field. The first person walking across it creates almost no visible trail. But if the same path is traveled every day, eventually it becomes obvious. Your habits work in much the same way. Repetition makes a behavior easier, more familiar, and more natural. So stop asking whether today's effort is large enough to change your life. Ask whether today's effort is moving you in the right direction. Then ask whether you are willing to repeat it tomorrow. Chapter 12. Raise your standards for meaningful work. Productivity becomes truly powerful when you stop asking only, "How can I do this faster?" and begin asking, "Is this worth doing well?" Speed can improve efficiency, but efficiency without direction can simply help you move faster in the wrong direction. You can answer emails faster, attend meetings more efficiently, complete tasks more quickly, and still fail to create anything that genuinely matters. Peak performance requires a higher standard. It requires you to care about the quality and significance of the work you produce. Your standards quietly shape your life. They determine how carefully you prepare, how seriously you approach your responsibilities, how much attention you give to details, and what you are willing to accept from yourself. When your standards are low, average becomes comfortable. When your standards rise, your behavior has to rise with them. This does not mean becoming obsessed with perfection. High standards and perfectionism are not the same thing. Perfectionism can keep you stuck because you are afraid that your work will never be good enough. High standards encourage you to give your best effort while understanding that improvement is part of the process. One says, "It must be flawless." The other says, "I will take this seriously." There is a difference between finishing a task and doing meaningful work. Anyone can rush through a responsibility simply to say it is completed, but meaningful work requires thought. It asks you to consider whether the result is useful, whether the details are correct, whether the work communicates clearly, and whether you would be comfortable attaching your name to it. Start noticing what you have become willing to tolerate. Perhaps you regularly submit work at the last minute, even when you know it could be better. Perhaps you allow your workspace to remain chaotic, your commitments to remain vague, or your important projects to receive your leftover attention. None of these choices may seem significant individually, but repeated standards become habits, and habits eventually become character. Your standards should influence how you begin a task. Before starting, understand what a strong result looks like. What would make this genuinely useful? What would make it clear? What would make it valuable? When you define quality before beginning, you give yourself something to aim toward instead of simply trying to reach the finish line. This mindset also changes how you handle simple work. You do not need to make every small task into a masterpiece. That would be inefficient. The point is to understand the appropriate standard for the importance of the task. A minor administrative responsibility may require accuracy and completion. A major presentation may require much more thought and refinement. Productivity means knowing where excellence deserves your time. One of the most valuable standards you can develop is the standard of preparation. Strong performance often looks effortless from the outside because the difficult work happened before anyone saw the final result. The presentation seems smooth because someone practiced. The article seems clear because someone edited it. The business process seems simple because someone carefully designed it. Excellence is often hidden preparation. Raise your standard for preparation, and you will raise your standard for performance. You should also raise your standard for what deserves your attention. This may be even more important than raising the quality of individual tasks. If you spend your entire day producing excellent work that has little value, you have not solved the productivity problem. You have simply become excellent at producing the wrong things. Ask yourself what deserves your best effort. Which projects could meaningfully improve your future? Which skills could increase your value? Which responsibilities have consequences beyond today? Which work would still matter if nobody applauded you for doing it? These questions move productivity beyond efficiency and toward purpose. Your standards also influence the people around you. When you consistently deliver thoughtful work, communicate clearly, meet commitments, and take responsibility for mistakes, people begin to trust you. Your reputation is not created by one impressive performance. It is created through repeated evidence of what you expect from yourself. But remember that high standards require patience. You will not suddenly become excellent at everything. There will be mistakes. There will be mediocre attempts. There will be days when your work falls below the level you wanted. The answer is not to become discouraged. Study the gap. What could have been better? What caused the weakness? What can you change next time? Improvement becomes much easier when criticism becomes information instead of an attack on your identity. You are allowed to be a beginner. You are allowed to make mistakes, but you should not become comfortable remaining careless. There is a powerful... Chapter 13. Design a system that works without motivation. Motivation is useful, but it is unreliable. Some mornings you wake up energized and convinced that you can accomplish anything. Other mornings, even simple tasks feel difficult. If your productivity depends entirely on how motivated you feel, your results will always rise and fall with your emotions. The solution is not to find a way to stay motivated forever. The solution is to build a system that continues moving you forward when motivation is nowhere to be found. A system is simply a reliable way of doing something. It tells you what matters, when you will work on it, how you will protect your attention, and how you will know whether you are making progress. Instead of waking up every day and inventing your productivity strategy from scratch, you create a structure that guides your decisions. Caleb Mercer, a 29-year-old software entrepreneur, had spent years depending on bursts of motivation. When inspiration arrived, he would work for long hours, redesign his plans, answer every message, and push himself intensely. Then the energy would disappear, and his projects would become disorganized. He eventually realized that the problem was not his ambition. It was the absence of a dependable system. He created a simple weekly structure, one major priority, protected blocks for deep work, specific periods for communication, a short daily review, and a weekly session to evaluate his progress. His work did not become effortless overnight, but it became far more predictable. That is what a good system should do. It should reduce the amount of thinking required to perform the right behavior. Start with a weekly priority. At the beginning of each week, identify the result that would make the greatest difference. You may have several responsibilities, but choose the one that deserves special protection. Then decide which actions will move that priority forward. Put those actions on your calendar rather than leaving them as vague intentions. Next, create protected periods for focused work. Your system should contain time when you are unavailable for unnecessary interruptions. This is where the principles from earlier chapters come together. You have already learned that attention is limited, distractions are expensive, and important work requires depth. Now turn those lessons into a recurring structure. Then create communication windows. Email, messages, calls, and notifications should have a place, but they should not control the entire day. When communication has boundaries, you can be responsive without becoming permanently reactive. You stop allowing every incoming request to rearrange your priorities. Your system should also include a daily shutdown. Before finishing work, take a few minutes to review what you completed, what remains unfinished, and what deserves attention next. This simple habit creates a bridge between today and tomorrow. You do not have to carry every unfinished thought in your head overnight because you have already given it a place. Then comes the weekly review. Step back from the daily noise and look at the larger picture. What actually moved forward? What consumed time without producing much value? Which distractions repeatedly appeared? Which commitments should be removed? What worked well? What needs to change? A system is not something you create once and follow forever. It should evolve as you learn more about yourself. Perhaps you discover that your best concentration happens earlier than you thought. Adjust your schedule. Perhaps you realize that too many meetings are breaking your focus. Reduce them where possible. Perhaps a particular routine is too complicated to maintain. Simplify it. The best system is not the most sophisticated one. It is the one you can actually use. This is where many people make another mistake. They build elaborate productivity systems that become projects themselves. They spend hours organizing categories, color-coding tasks, experimenting with apps, and designing perfect schedules. Eventually, managing the system becomes another form of procrastination. Keep it simple. You need to know what matters, when you will work on it, what you will ignore, and how you will review your progress. Everything else is optional. Your system should also contain a minimum standard for difficult days. You will not always have perfect energy. You will not always have uninterrupted time. Something unexpected will happen. Decide beforehand what showing up means when circumstances are not ideal. Perhaps you complete one important task, spend 30 minutes on your priority, or simply protect the habit from disappearing completely. This prevents an imperfect day from becoming an abandoned system. Remember, the purpose of a system is not to control every minute of your life. It is to make meaningful behavior easier to repeat. It gives you structure without taking away flexibility. It protects your priorities while allowing you to adapt when reality changes. Eventually, something important happens. You stop asking yourself, "Do I feel like doing this?" The question becomes, "What does my system say comes next?" That is a major shift. You are no longer depending on it. Chapter 14. Become the person who can do great work. Productivity is often presented as a collection of techniques. Wake up earlier, make a list, block your calendar, turn off notifications, work in focused sessions, build better routines. All of these things can help, but they are not the deepest part of productivity. The deepest part is the person you become through practicing them. Your systems matter, but your identity determines whether you will continue using them when life becomes difficult. You have spent these chapters learning how to direct your attention, protect your energy, choose priorities, eliminate distractions, finish what you start, and build systems that do not depend on constant motivation. But none of these lessons are meant to turn you into a machine that works endlessly. They are meant to help you become someone who can give full attention to what deserves it. Great work requires presence. It requires the ability to sit with a difficult problem without immediately escaping. It requires patience when results are slow. It requires discipline when nobody is watching. It requires the courage to say no to things that are attractive but unnecessary. And it requires enough self-awareness to recognize when you are spending your life being busy instead of being useful. This is where productivity becomes personal. Every time you protect an important hour, you are making a statement about what matters to you. Every time you put away a distraction, you are choosing your future over an immediate impulse. Every time you finish a difficult task, you are strengthening your trust in yourself. Every time you return after falling out of rhythm, you prove that one imperfect day does not define you. Your habits are constantly teaching you who you are. If you repeatedly tell yourself that you cannot concentrate, your behavior will begin supporting that belief. If you repeatedly tell yourself that you always procrastinate, you may begin treating procrastination as part of your identity, but the opposite is also true. When you repeatedly practice focus, you become more focused. When you repeatedly keep commitments, you become more dependable. When you repeatedly choose important work over easy distraction, you become more disciplined. Identity follows evidence. You do not have to convince yourself that you are a focused person through positive statements. Give yourself evidence. Sit down and focus. Complete the work. Do it again tomorrow. Keep going. Eventually, your behavior begins telling the story for you. There will still be difficult days. There will be mornings when your concentration is weak and evenings when you wonder whether your effort is producing anything. There will be interruptions, unexpected responsibilities, disappointments, and moments when you fall back into old habits. Do not interpret these moments as proof that you have failed. They are simply part of becoming better. The real test is what you do next. Return to the priority, return to the routine, return to the work. You do not need to feel powerful before you begin. You become stronger by beginning when you do not feel powerful. This is also why great productivity should never be separated from purpose. Ask yourself what all this focus is for. Why do you want to become more productive? Is it to build something meaningful, to become excellent at your craft, to create greater freedom, to support the people you care about, to develop your potential, to have more control over your time? If you never answer that question, productivity can become another form of endless striving. You can become extremely efficient without knowing where you are going. Your goal is not to fill every hour. Your goal is to make your hours count. There is a difference between working hard and working with intention. One can leave you exhausted, the other can leave you fulfilled. When you know what matters, discipline becomes easier because your effort has a destination. So take the lessons from this audiobook and make them personal. Protect your attention. Choose fewer priorities. Work deeply. Create routines. Control your environment. Manage your energy. Finish what you begin. Make decisions in advance. Stay consistent. Raise your standards. Build systems that support the person you want to become. Then let those behaviors become part of your identity. Do not aim to become productive only when conditions are perfect. Become the kind of person who can produce meaningful work in ordinary conditions. Become someone who does not need constant excitement to act. Someone who can concentrate when the world is noisy. Someone who can remain committed when progress is slow. Someone who understands that excellence is built quietly, repeatedly, and patiently. Your attention is shaping your days. Your days are shaping your habits. Your habits are shaping your character. And your character is shaping the life you are creating. That is the real productivity code. Not doing more, not rushing faster, not filling every empty moment. It is learning to direct your mind, your energy, and your effort toward what truly matters, and doing it consistently enough that great work becomes a natural expression of who you are. Master that, and productivity stops being. Conclusion. Productivity is not about squeezing more tasks into your day. It is about becoming more intentional with the life you have been given. It is about knowing what matters, protecting your attention, directing your energy, and refusing to let every interruption become an instruction. You have learned that real productivity begins in the mind. Before you can change your schedule, you have to change your definition of meaningful work. You have learned to distinguish activity from progress, urgency from importance, and movement from achievement. You have learned that your attention is not an unlimited resource. Where you repeatedly place it will eventually shape your results. You have also learned to train your mind for focus, to remove distractions instead of constantly fighting them, to choose one important thing instead of treating everything as equally urgent, to build routines that make discipline easier, to enter deep work and remain with difficult problems long enough for deeper thinking to emerge. You have learned that multitasking is not the advantage it appears to be, and that protecting your energy is just as important as managing your time. You have learned to finish what you start, make important decisions before distractions arrive, and use consistency to allow small actions to compound into meaningful results. And perhaps most importantly, you have learned that productivity is not simply a collection of techniques. It is a reflection of who you are becoming. You will still have distracted days, you will still procrastinate sometimes, you will still lose focus, change plans, underestimate a task, or allow something unimportant to consume your attention. That is part of being human. The goal was never perfection. The goal is awareness. When you notice yourself drifting, you now know how to return. Return to the priority. Return to the routine. Return to the work. Return to what matters. Do not wait for a perfect morning to begin. Do not wait until you feel completely motivated. Do not wait for your schedule to become empty. There will always be another message, another responsibility, another distraction, and another reason to postpone the important work. Begin anyway. Choose one meaningful thing and give it your full attention. Then do it again tomorrow. Let your results accumulate quietly. Let your discipline become stronger through repetition. Let your standards rise. Let your systems become simpler and more reliable. Let your attention become something you control rather than something the world constantly claims. Your life is being shaped in the moments you often overlook, the hour you protect, the distraction you ignore, the difficult task you finish, the commitment you keep, the unnecessary obligation you decline, the morning when you begin despite not feeling motivated. These moments may seem small, but repeated over years, they become the architecture of your life. You do not need to become a completely different person overnight. You simply need to make better decisions with the next hour, then the next day, then the next week. Eventually, those decisions become habits. Those habits become character, and that character determines what you are capable of creating. So close this audiobook with one commitment. Stop giving your best attention to everything. Give it to what matters. Protect your mind from unnecessary noise. Protect your time from unnecessary demands. Protect your energy from unnecessary exhaustion. And protect your future from the temptation to live entirely in the present.